Hello, good morning. You're watching News 9. I'm Shweta Kothari. We're bringing you stories from the world of business, policy and economy. With me is my colleague Karthik Malhotra. As usual, Karthik, good morning.
Good morning, Shweta. How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very well. And so are the markets this morning.
Markets are very well as well.
Yeah,
opening in the green.
Opening in the green, I think nothing to complain about the mood of the markets overall, as we have seen sustained rally over the last many days now. We are seeing a 0.1, 0.2, 0.3% increase in markets on a daily basis. That trend continues today as well. When markets opened at about 9:30 a.m., we took a stock check. You were looking at Sensex, Nifty, Nifty Bank, Nifty IT, all in the green. Nifty IT, of course, exceeding expectations at up about 0.6% or so. And all three other broader market indices up in the green by about 0.2%. Nifty 50 holding squarely above the 19,300 mark, touching 19,350 levels. Sensex continues to be well above 65,000 levels. Of course, we've come down squarely from the peaks that the market had seen of the Nifty at that time, you know, in kissing distance of 20,000 points and Sensex around 67,000 points. We don't see those numbers on the boards right now, but there has been a gradual daily increase in the mood in the markets, and that's showing on the screens as well.
All right, let's get our guest Chirag Patel, who's the co-head of product and strategies at White Oak Capital, joining us on the show to weigh in on what's affecting the markets this morning. Chirag, good morning. Markets opening in the green once again. What exactly is weighing in?
So basically, if you see yesterday, the US Dow closed on a green zone, and currently the sentiment is also positive mostly, and that is what is also reflecting in the numbers, right? And India is also doing well in terms of all macro parameters. All companies' result has been good, the margins are good, so that is what is reflecting into the Sensex. However, day to day it is very difficult to comment on such movement, but yeah, fairly India is doing fairly well as compared to the rest of the world. That is what is being reflected on everyday scenarios mostly.
So I think three big headline events this week. One, of course, we saw yesterday, Chirag, with Reliance AGM, and big announcements coming there, which of course we will come to subsequently in our discussion on the show and with you and Shweta. In addition to that, we are hoping that there is some sort of a conclusion to the Adani Hindenburg saga today. SEBI is expected to submit its report in Supreme Court, and that matter is up for hearing today. And then, of course, 31st August
Adani Group
is
stocks, in fact, under pressure due to that hearing.
Well, they opened in the green when I checked markets last. And the third headline event, Chirag, that I think we will all be waiting for are Q1 growth numbers expected on the 31st of August. Now, Reliance, of course, has played out well when it comes not specifically to the Reliance stock, but overall to the mood of the market. Adani, we don't know where it's going to head from today. And then, of course, the big headline event of growth figures coming out on the 31st of August. How do you expect markets to read all these movements?
So basically, a stock market is nothing but a present value of the future cash flows. So whenever any company give an optimistic kind of statements, the market reacts to it, and it also depends on the credibility of the companies who are declaring those kind of estimates and assumption, and that drives the stock prices also, because the market start reflecting those future cash flow in its present value. So that is how it functions, right? And the growth numbers that we are going to get, so if you see in current quarter also, the result has been fairly good, because the WPI was down, the margin has improved. So revenue was struggling slightly, but the margin has been higher because the WPI was lower during the last quarter, right? So which is actually the cost to the manufacturer. So margin has improved in last quarter, and if you see the GST collection was fairly rising month on month. So we expect good GDP number. And if you see from the India perspective, right, India is doing fairly well as compared to the global scenarios, right? So for example, if you see from 2011 to 2020, the world was different. It was a zero interest era. It started with QE1, QE2, Operation Twist, and the world is running on stimulus, right, with zero interest or almost close to zero kind of interest. But India was not having the same scenario. We were running high interest rate during the same period. But post-COVID, the world has changed, right? The interest rate has been up. There is inflationary pressure everywhere, right? And they have seen the inflation which they have never seen in their life, right? And our interest rate and our inflation is lower than the pre-COVID level. right? So nothing has changed for us, but actually things has improved for us. So actually the stock market is nothing but it's a present value of its future cash flow. So it has two components. It's the growth of the future cash flow plus the discounting rate. You are at which rate you are discounting those cash flows, right? So in India, the growth has improved, the inflation is fairly well placed, and the interest rate is lower as compared to the pre-COVID era, and that is why the Indian market is outperforming, right? So that's the scene, and
Okay.
whenever there is a capability, the capital will chase eventually, right? So that we are looking across the market.
How do you read the FDI inflows dwindling? That's a story that we were talking about yesterday and it was in the papers as well. FDI inflows in India have now been stuck in a slow lane. We've seen, in fact, a year-on-year decline of about 34%. What is triggering reduction in capital chasing India in terms of direct investments? I'm not talking about stock markets, but in general, investment mood in India seems to have dampened post-COVID in the last 1 year alone.
So basically, if you see the FDI flows are, if you see on a cumulative basis, they have been increasing in India. Sometimes they will be higher and sometimes they will be lower. But from where we are comparing it, if we are comparing from the high base, you will see a lower FDI flows. But when you compare on aggregate basis over a long-term period, we are fairly increasing the rates. But yeah, you may be right that, in recent past, it has been lower than what we have witnessed a year back, right? So that's the scenario. So it is a basically an anchoring bias. So from where you are starting. And
Okay,
if you
and
see, yeah.
yeah, so specifically for investors, if you were to take the story of India back to investors and you represent the AMC business at White Oak, what do you think should be the long-term strategy of investors? Active investing, passive investing, direct stocks, mutual funds, what seems to be the best formula for Indians to want to invest in markets today?
So basically, so India is a country where there is a ample scope of active investing because we are not a market which is a matured market like United States or other developed market. We are still a developing market, and all the market which has gone through this transition phase from developing to developed market, they have created alpha. So there is a scope for active management. However, those who want a low cost product can also opt for a passive index investing kind of product. There is no harm in doing that also. So it is a combination of active and passive management, but we believe that there is an ample scope of active management and there are significant opportunities in small and mid cap space. And another thing is, rather than betting on any sector or any theme, I think India is a market which is fairly diversified, right? If you, for example, if you consider a Taiwanese market, it is you recall a semiconductor industry. If you are considering a Bangladesh market, you recall a textile market. But if you think of an Indian market, it is not skewed by any sector, right? It is actually a conglomeration of various sectors, and there can be a great company within a average sector, or there can be a bad company in a bullish sector also. So I think if you identify great companies who is having a competitive edge, who can maintain its margin in adverse condition also and grow faster in during the good times, I think a better stock picking, those companies who are having great businesses, who are having
Okay.
scalabilities and great execution are the great companies to invest in. And I think if you don't understand equities, so just to tell you that if you can't write 5 page on a stock, you should invest into mutual funds, right? So that is what is.
Okay, interesting. Chirag, let's also quickly take a look at the stocks that are in focus today. Reliance, of course, on the back of its 46th AGM. A lot of key, crucial announcements that were made by Mukesh Ambani yesterday. But one of the key announcements that stands out is the fact that there is a change in the helm of affairs. Power structure is changing very, very quickly. There is a succession plan in place. So I think one thing that Mukesh Ambani has learned from his own personal experience is to have a solid succession plan in place. And we see all three children being inducted now into the board of directors as non-executive members. Neeta Ambani stepping down. What does it mean for retail business, for the telecom business at Reliance, Karthik?
Right. So let's look at what are the changes, right? And some of these changes, in fact, most of these changes are not coming as any sort of a surprise, because Mukesh Ambani had stated even earlier that he intends to continue in the capacity of chairman for Reliance Industries for another 5 years. And this, of course, comes when his term expires the next 5 years in 2027, he's going to be 72 years. And 70 is otherwise the cap for the chairman of a listed company. So Mukesh Ambani clearly stating that he will continue as chairman for another 5 years, and the board has approved that decision. So that's old headline, but yes, now it is a stated fact, stated reality. So Mukesh Ambani will stay as chairman for 5 years. Neeta Ambani has quit the RIL board, and the intent is now to focus squarely on the Reliance Foundation, the CSR arm of Reliance Industries, and really work for the common good of of society at large. Now let's talk about succession planning, and you're right. I think this is among all the great things that Dhirubhai Ambani had done. One of his grave mistakes was to not have a stated succession plan, and that led to this infighting between the two brothers, Mukesh Ambani and Anil Ambani, and they've both charted very different trajectories, directions in their own businesses and their own lives. So Akash Ambani, Isha Ambani and Anant Ambani will join the RIL board. And like you mentioned, they're going to be non-executive directors. However, there's a clear-cut succession plan for each one of them. So Akash Ambani, as we already know, Akash Ambani is going to continue to lead the Jio vertical. Right. And Jio, of course, is telecom, but Jio right now is also Jio Financial Services. We'll come to that subsequently. But Akash Ambani, 31-year-old, third-generation Ambani, to lead Reliance Jio. Then sister Isha Ambani, twin sister Isha Ambani, also 31 years of age, is going to lead the retail arm, Reliance Retail. Again, no shocker here. We have seen over the last many AGMs and the various announcements being made on Jio, on retail, have been made by the two children of Mukesh and Neeta Ambani. Anant Ambani, the younger sibling, 28-year-old, is going to lead the new energy business. This new energy business, as Mukesh Ambani also mentioned at the 46th AGM yesterday, is pretty much the definition of a new Reliance. We've always seen Reliance as an oil to telco conglomerate. At one point in one of his AGMs, maybe 5 years ago, Mukesh Ambani had mentioned that data is the new oil. I think now any analogy with oil is seeming a little out of place, simply because even oil, the traditional oil business that we know, is a polluting business. And new renewable energy could pretty much be the new definition of the new Reliance. So renewable energy, wind energy being a critical component there, is the next logical step for an energy producing conglomerate like Reliance.
A new tech company, a new energy company, that is the direction in which Reliance is heading. Let's also get in our guest to perhaps weigh in on that. What is your, as far as Chirag, the planning, the succession ahead is concerned, how optimistic, upbeat are you with Reliance? I mean, Isha and Anant and Akash, all three children have been in fact heading, retail and the Jio Telecom business for a while now. There's no clarity, Karthik, on Jio Financials just as yet? Who's going to head Jio Financials?
So, to my understanding, if they're using the same brand, which is Jio, then Jio Telecom.
And has to be Akash.
It has to be Akash, simply because all these financial products which are going to be rolled out are also going to be rolled out on the Jio platforms using the Jio platforms, Jio technology, Jio connectivity. And the whole digital interface is going to be very closely linked, I believe, with the telecom business. Right. So, it's largely, I think, a fintech sort of a player emerging now with so many additions to it, as opposed to a pure play telecom player or a pure play NBFC traditionally, as we know it. But Reliance stocks in the morning taking a beating, down about 0.6% or so in early trade. I wonder what the markets are making of the succession plan. Chirag?
Right. Definitely now the uncertainty has been, is now the clarity. And it is good to have a succession planning so the market can have a clear view that how long the cash flow and what is the ability of the new, directors and new, the board which is coming to run the company. And that also Street will look for. And that is what is very much expected outcome which the street is expecting, and that's why you can see the flattish kind of move, because mostly whatever is known to everyone, it is always discounted into the market. And yeah, they are moving to the new age businesses. Like retail is one of the greatest B2C businesses that are the best businesses, because there are always higher margin. And now whatever happened on the technology side, now there are 65 crore cell phone user, and it is very easy to access many of the things which was not possible earlier, right? When we don't have the smartphones, now the smartphone has penetrated into the fag end of the country also. So B2C is quite interesting business in
Okay.
India, and what is driving the growth and the kind of things, converting a business from oil to a new energy business is always a welcome move, and that is what the street is expecting.
I
All
think
right.
since you're talking succession,
Since
it will
we're-
be interesting to also look at what Mukesh Ambani himself said in the capacity of chairman, but it sounded almost like a father speaking about and a father speaking so proudly about
About his children?
the achievements of their children. So let's pull up that quote of Mukesh Ambani there, saying that the children have actually earned their stripes, and literally, using the connotation of stripes as it is in military parlance when you go up the ranks. And he's saying, I can say that they've earned their stripes through dedication, commitment, and hard work. Yeah, it's the chairman of Reliance Industries, but also the father of Akash, Isha, and Anant Ambani speaking there.
Right. So a proud father there. But, one of the businesses that I think streets were expecting more clarity on was the JioFin business.
Yeah.
There is some clarity there, Karthik. We know that it's going to enter the insurance space. We know that they may have an, AMC business, because there was this big announcement that came by the way of BlackRock, but no clarity there as far as AMC is concerned. So what do we know so far on Jio Finance? What is the road ahead?
So, as I read it, Shweta, Jio Financial Services was demerged from Reliance Industries and was touted to be an NBFC player, a non-banking financial corporation, right? But now it looks like the whole formula is complete, that it's an NBFC.
Okay.
It is an AMC.
Okay.
So I don't think Chirag is going to be very happy about that, another player in the AMC business, but we'll come to Chirag. So it's an NBFC, it's an AMC, and the new announcement that came yesterday is that it is also going to be an insurance player, right? So what are the headlines? The headlines are that there is going to be this foray into insurance, and insurance when it comes to all three insurances, which is life insurance, health insurance, as well as general insurance. So these are going to be insurance products stroke services being rolled out on the Jio Financial Services platform. Now, how is this service actually going to be dispersed? It's going to be dispersed using the Jio platform, which of course, as we know, is a digital platform, and there's going to be the solid, robust digital interface to offer these financial products stroke services to largely the the entire middle class of India, and perhaps many insurance products which can penetrate even deeper into the rural segment of society, just like the mobile telecom operations of Jio have penetrated. Now, what is interesting to note here is that NBFC, AMCs, and insurance all have very different regulators. So eventually, are we looking at Jio Financial Services, and telecom of course has yet another regulator. So
yes.
Are we looking at brand Jio as a sum of multiple parts of different companies? Eventually it becomes a conglomerate of its own and has different demerged entities or different companies for each of these different verticals. Right. And that is going to be an interesting story to watch and see. But what is interesting about the way Mukesh Ambani makes his speeches is that you use these wonderful big national interest words like democratization of financial services, right? These are statesmanly like statements that come every time there's an AGM, whether we talk about the launch of Jio Telecom and how it was to actually make data accessible, affordable to the last mile.
Selling the Indian dream, perhaps.
It's the Indian dream.
Right.
It sometimes is very difficult to differentiate between the words used by Prime Minister Modi and Reliance Chairman Mukesh Ambani, because they're talking pretty much the same language, right? So it clearly shows an alignment with the national goals, and here we're talking about democratization of financial services, we are talking about simple services, we are talking about affordable services, we are talking about innovative services, we are talking about intuitive services, and these are all largely going to attract, I think, the entire user base of Jio, and that user base is also going to continue to grow exponentially through the Jio Air Fibre, which we can come to after we've taken a word from Chirag.
Let's come to Air Fibre later, but Chirag, you know, also I understand the optimism. We know that this is one of the biggest conglomerates in the country, but also it's a business at the end of the day, which means the end goal is to make money.
Of course.
And even as Mukesh Ambani uses these big words like democratization of financial services, which is what the country needs at this point in time, the end goal will always be to make money because it is a business. So I think it's important to point that out as well.
Absolutely right.
And let's quickly get Chirag. Chirag, how jittery are you about the competition that's going to be in the AMC space with JioFin now entering that space and more, and with all the slew of latest announcements that is coming in as far as Jio Financial Services is concerned?
So we are just, our savings into equity is just 4.48% of the total saving. So, and if you see in US or a developed world, it is more than 50%. So when you are expanding, you need more and more players, because when there is an expansion, everybody share the cost of the expansion. And so we are just witnessing 41st and 42nd asset management company. I think in 5-7 years, we will have 100 asset management company, and it is great to be 41st or 42nd asset management company at that point in time. So I think the competition is good. It is good when you expand, all companies share the cost of the expansion, and if you are having more and more players, we can reach faster to 20, 25%, 40% of the share of total savings of Indian, and it is good for all Indians, right? So profit is actually when you work for any cause. The profit is a byproduct.
Also, a question that comes to my mind, sorry to interrupt there, is it fair competition at all? Because you have a Reliance-like company that already has a great customer base by the way of its telecom service. It has huge corpus, deep pockets. The competition is likely to be tilted, swayed in favor of Reliance.
So actually, as you know, India has started doing well, the money has started flowing to India. If there is a capabilities, if there is a capability to generate alpha, I think money will chase to those companies, right? The industry has become meritocratic now. So if you are able to give good investing experience to your investor, the money will chase. And that has been happened in US also, in other developed market also. Those funds which has performed well, they actually get disproportionate share of the new investments. So it is all a meritocratic industry. As of transaction is necessary, but if you perform well, you will get the flows. That is what is the story behind the scene.
All right, let's move on to Jio Air Fibre, because that is another news that is coming. Will be launched in September, on 18th of September. 19th of September, which is the day of Ganesh Chaturthi, the auspicious day as Mukesh Ambani called it.
Yes, absolutely. So 19th September, what is Jio Air Fibre? Jio Air Fibre, I believe, is India's answer to Elon Musk's Spacelink.
Okay.
Right. And it's wireless internet connectivity, and we are not talking about wireless internet connectivity just as we know the cellular data which gets transmitted on our mobile phones. It's pretty much broadband 5G speeds on any devices, on any smart device that can link to an internet, and it's on the go. Well, not as much on the go. I think it is very pinpointed, so it targets premises like homes or offices individually. It's pretty much like broadband, but this broadband coming to you via satellite instead of coming through optical fiber cable networks. Now, what are the targets here? Again, we are talking big numbers. Anything to do with Reliance usually comes with very, very big numbers, right? So we are talking about 200 million new connections using Jio Air Fibre starting 19th of September. So 200 million is the immediate target for Reliance Jio Air Fibre. Now, what is the kind of capability to offer these services? I think Mukesh Ambani stated it fairly accurately. He said it takes about 15,000 connections a day right now when you talk about the wired connections coming into homes. That's the kind of capacity Reliance has. It can serve new connections or install new connections to a limit of 15,000 connections a day. It's a huge number, but juxtapose it against what Jio Air Fibre can do. Air Fibre can actually connect 1,50,000 premises a day. that is 10 times more capability or capacity than the cable network that we know Jio to have already, for which of course a lot of digging and a lot of laying of optical fiber cable networks, etc., was done. I think most of that infrastructure is still going to be in use, because you would still be connecting internet from point A to point B, and thereafter there is a satellite that comes into picture. But we are talking about 10x the capacity of new connections.
Right.
So we've seen over the last 7 years, ever since Jio has been in action, we've seen how it has captured the market with a present day 7-year later capacity of only 15,000 premises a day. Imagine how it scales up if you're able to reach 150,000 households every single day as new connections. And the target of 200 million then of course seems fairly achievable. Now again, big words that always come from any Reliance AGM and those statesmanly like statements that come. Again, this is about democratizing AI, as Mukesh Ambani said. So artificial intelligence is not going to be limited to the elite few. Artificial intelligence is going to be democratized, and every last nook and corner in this country would be able to access AI-driven products which require great power processing capability, which will run seamlessly on the 5G network. And I think the data will be crunched at all the Brookfield partnered data centers which are coming up in multiple cities. I think Chennai, Hyderabad and Bombay to begin with, Mumbai to begin with. So all of this, I think this entire backwardly integrated, forward integrated network is going to pretty much be the be all and end all of all telecom competition ever in India.
All right, telecom competition. Talking about competition, Chirag, there's hardly any, is there? 45 million subscribers is what Jio claims to have at this point in time. Almost 40% of the market share or 50% of the market share?
Yeah, I think if I remember right, it was about 35% or so, 35-36% plus.
35% or 40% of the market
share.
One third
of India.
Of the Indian telecom market share. It's only likely to grow. So the fact that we are heading towards a duopoly, in fact we are already in a duopoly-like situation, Chirag, is all the more real.
Yeah, basically that is what we are heading for, right? So there are basically two big players which are actually dominating the market. And nowadays what has happened that it has become like electricity is basic necessity, the data has become basic necessity. But if you see worldwide, the content, for example, a semiconductor company has created lesser wealth than a software companies which uses that semiconductor, and semiconductor seems to be more monopolistic business. So I think it is not the combination of only data, it is the combination of content, the data that you provide, the content creations. All this will actually, it is an ecosystem that has been created by the company, and in most of the cases this industry is either duopoly or a triopoly kind of business. But actually the end user or the end use of this connectivity or this infrastructure is actually a great space to look at once we establish all those networks. And yeah, it is great to have all those kind of, because it is not about growth, it is also velocity of the growth. Now connecting this many people in a single day is a great achievement.
Absolutely, a great achievement there. We will have to, of course, keep tracking the trajectory of Jio as a telecom business. But shifting focus to Reliance's foray, rather continued focus on the new energy business, which is the solar energy, the wind energy, substantial announcements, of course, being made on that segment as well.
I think the big headline coming from Reliance's entry into or expansion plans into the wind business is through seeking partnerships of global manufacturers of wind energy equipment manufacturers, and therein lies this opportunity for many more global brands to seek some sort of a manufacturing entry into India or a partnership when it comes to tying up with Reliance Energy, and this is of course going to be the renewed focus on renewable energy. So I think a great opportunity there. So big one announcement coming that there is an open partnership window available for global brands. In addition to that, I think there is great expansion in store for the Jamnagar gas production plant, and also the Kaveri Basin, which is getting explored further for producing gas, and that gas becomes a critical component even in renewable energy production. In addition to that, I think another big announcement coming by way of Reliance wanting to get into manufacturing of carbon fiber. And this carbon fiber is the material used to create those huge wind turbines. And those turbines, which are largely imported right now, more than 50% of the wind energy capacity in India right now runs on imported turbines. And those turbines now start getting manufactured in India.
Okay.
And overall, I think the statement coming from Mukesh Ambani there that at least 30 to 40% of the power being generated in India will be catered to by the 100 gigawatt mega manufacturing that Reliance is investing in. And 2030 seems to be the target for that, by when 100 gigawatts of installed capacity in energy will actually come from Reliance's wind energy business.
All right, and on the back of all that news that is coming in this morning, Reliance Industries RIL stock has pared some of its losses.
Okay.
It's only down by about 0.7% as of right now. So I think we'll have to, of course, Chirag, wait and watch out for
but
the investors
Chirag, I wanted to understand from you that other energy stocks, if you look at competition when it comes to energy with Reliance, there is Tata Energy and there is L&T, both fairly large players in the energy business, and somehow both their stocks are also up in the green this morning. What could be the reason? Is this expansion of the renewable capacity in India leading overall to a surge in momentum when it comes to energy stocks?
So basically how the market function, it as I have told you initially also, it is a present value of a future cash flow. Now, if you see those established players who are already having profitability, and when the interest rates are going up, right, across the world and India also, the present value of the nearer cash flow matters a lot than the farther cash flows, right? So because all those companies which are coming today are actually having a cash flow far ahead in the future, right? So when you discount those cash flow with higher interest rate, they will be lesser than those who are actually the present cash flow in nearer future. So that is how the market discount every day, and that is what. And when the interest rates start going down, at that time the higher growth company in the future will perform well. So it's not matter of today; it is the matter of actually how the global interest rate and the global economic scenario playing out nowadays.
Right, and of course, renewed interest not there just from Reliance's side and a lot of other private players. Prime Minister, of course, also batting for green energy. He spoke at B20, he spoke of a greener future, he spoke of why there's need for green energy to transition into a better future, reiterating the net carbon zero goal by 2070. So all in line as far as, India's continued attempt to shift towards greener segments, greener shoots is concerned. But we'll move on from Reliance at this point in time and go to another important conglomerate that is going to be in focus, that is Adani. We know that the slated Supreme Court hearing on SEBI continuing its investigation into Adani, perhaps also filing its final report. A status report was already filed on Friday. Whether something substantial will come out of that or not, but Adani and the Hindenburg saga continues. So all focus, of course, will be on Adani stocks, as many as 10 stocks of Adani listed companies.
That's right, Shweta. And this morning, in fact, Adani stocks, all Adani stocks, Adani Enterprises, Adani Power, Adani Ports, all in the green, ranging from about 0.6-0.7% up to about 2.5% up.
Okay.
So I think it seems that the market has now realized with the reports that came out of SEBI's interim investigation report filed on Friday, that there perhaps isn't much substance now to alluring to any wrongdoing when it comes to the Adani Hindenburg saga. So it seems that SEBI is unlikely to press very hard charges.
Okay.
But again, until that report is filed and until I'm telling you how the market seems to be reading it. So until that report is filed and until we know for a fact what that report states,
it'd be premature.
It's going to be a little premature. But there's a Reuters source-based story that was that was in the papers this morning, and that has an interesting take, and that is saying that some sources within SEBI have confirmed to Reuters that there could be perhaps up to 2 charges of wrongdoing when it comes to financial irregularity, and more in terms of holding of stock through offshore entities in the Adani stable, in the Adani group stocks. But again, contradictory reports coming, as it has been reported in multiple papers using the same sources of Reuters, suggesting that there could perhaps
be a clean sheet as well.
There could be just a technical error or a technical wrongdoing when it comes to Adani's holding of stake using these offshore entity routes, and that could maybe result in a small monetary penalty and nothing more than that. Now, for a charge like this, apparently, again, the report states that the penalty could be perhaps not in excess of about 1 crore rupees. So that's pretty much pocket change for Reliance. Sorry, for Adani Group. But there are contradictory reports. The other one stating that it could also, if the charges are grave, if the charges are serious, it could also lead to perhaps delisting of a few Adani stocks. But I think it's all, it's a pendulum. It's going from one extreme to another. I think we'll have to be patient. We'll have to wait for that final report to be submitted and the Supreme Court's verdict on that report.
Investors are not jittery about what's going to come out
seem
at
like
all.
Investors
They are very
jittery.
confident.
In fact, they think they've got the right value, and Adani businesses have shared about what, $100 billion or something. I don't know what that figure is. It's a huge figure, but from its peak in Jan, Adani stocks have taken a massive beating, and even after the recovery, it's just at about 50-60% of what it was trading at last. So it seems that investors are still assuming that it's a fair price to pick up a stock like Adani Enterprises, Adani Ports, Adani Power, in anticipation of a positive news coming from the Supreme Court's end, and of course based on the investigation of SEBI.
All right, Chirag, how are you reading into what's going to come out of Supreme Court today? Investors continue to be, they continue to be confident. They believe that it may be a clean sheet. Mixed reports coming out at this point. We don't know what it's going to be. It would be a matter of conjecture to say anything right now. Of course, we'll have to wait and watch out for when the Supreme Court hears the matter, which is going to be in a couple of hours from now. But what's your pick right now?
So it is very premature to comment on anything today, because there could be a couple of scenarios, as you rightly mentioned, that there could be a minimal penalty, and there could be a chances that you are finding something and you end up finding something else, because then when there is an investigation, you may end up finding something else than what you are being investigated for. So now we have to see that whether there is any substance on the Hindenburg report, that it is just an allegation or there is some criticism which has also involved in the allegation. So I think we have to look for the final hearing, and that is what the market is also expecting. I think market is expecting a fair hearing as of now.
Absolutely, it is going to be a fair hearing, no doubt on that. Supreme Court, of course, slated to hear, and decide on what SEBI comes out with today. But remember, since January 24th, huge pressure on Adani Group companies, huge pressure on Gautam Adani, and statements made by Gautam Adani and many of his companies, many of his representatives, trying to brush off those charges. Very serious allegations. Whether there's going to be a clean sheet or not, it's been months now. I think some clarity needed. Almost start of the year and now almost towards the end of the year. It's been good 8-9 months.
Let's hope there is some final conclusion on this matter today, and it doesn't sort of continue hinging on for the rest of the year.
Absolutely, 10 months on. Hopefully there'll be some end to the continued Adani Hindenburg saga. We're going bring more details hopefully at 4 o'clock this afternoon. But moving on to another stock that we are tracking, and that is Zomato. Zomato was up yesterday. We'll try and pull up those numbers very quickly, but a lot of news coming in. Tiger Global, one of the investors, has in fact invested in the company, has exited a 1.8%
1.43% stake has been offloaded by Tiger Global. And I think it was a block deal, and I think this was coming. And as is the case, I think with most investments, it's a very simple sort of a formula that investors feel confident that now, at this valuation at the present stage, if they offload their holding in the company, which they had picked up at perhaps better valuations or lower valuations, then they would make a killing and they would exit. Of course, there is a minimum holding period when it comes to investors exiting a stock. Remember, Zomato got listed, just about 2 years ago or so. It was April or May 2021 when when we saw the listing of Zomato. And despite a few initial hiccups, I think the stock has been more or less steady. One can't call it a rock star performing star. It has been okay. But the fact that Zomato's businesses are also turning profitable, there is expansion across multiple domains, acquisition of Blinkit, all of this auguring well, it seems, for the company and for the investors invested in the Zomato stock.
All right, auguring well, stock is up by almost 1.5% this morning, up almost 5% through the week.
Yeah, and they were waiting for the lock-in period to get over. It got over yesterday.
Okay.
So they have exited today.
All right.
So they got a Nelson number of 111 crores as the graphic state when the merger happened between Blinkit and Zomato, and Tiger, being one of the early investors in Zomato, got that share.
Okay.
For the merger. It was a 1-year lock-in, which got, like I mentioned, over on a Monday, that is yesterday, and they have exited. They have raised 1,124 crores in the sell-off of their stake in the business, and as a result of that, also the shares have jumped 1.5%. Zomato shares. Since yesterday.
All right. So, Zomato shares jumping 1.8%.
Good for both parties.
Absolutely. Chirag, what's your take on the Zomato stock?
So basically, it is one of the great new age business that India is having, and that changed the way India works. So for example, in a country, in any metro, you can't expect a life without this kind of companies nowadays. So I think how it penetrates the other end of the country is actually a thing to see. And in a new age company like this, I think this kind of things is a routine, right? Rather than any established company, when something happened, it's a great news. But actually, I think this is the business that Street is tracking also, and people are looking hopefully towards the business and all.
All right. Of course, a new age company. Good news coming in there. Also, by the way of the fact that Zomato is finally profitable. And I think a lot of people were waiting for that. Markets were waiting for that. Although it was technical, not technical.
Technical profitability.
Technical profitability on the books. But all in all, I think good headline there for Zomato. Shares are rallying. Investors are positive. Hopefully, Zomato will continue on the trajectory for some more time. I think that is all we have as far as India is concerned. But moving abroad and moving to another story that we are tracking. But before we do that, let me quickly also thank Chirag for joining us this morning, Chirag Patel, thanks very much for taking time out for joining us this morning with your inputs on a couple of good important stories that we tracked this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Right. Moving on to a story that we're tracking that is coming by the way of Taiwan. It appears Foxconn is taking over Taiwan quite literally.
See if this is reminiscent of something that you see in India.
Okay.
Mr. Terry Gao, who is the head of, who heads Foxconn, wanted to run for presidency for a second time in May with his party, Kuomintang, forgive me for getting which is the principal KMT, which is the principal opposition party in Taiwan. He was refused candidacy.
Okay.
He left the party in a half, and now he has thrown his own hat in the ring. So he is the third candidate. In the opinion polls, he is trailing.
Okay.
The opposition vote is now going to be split 3 ways. Experts believe that if he was the only candidate, and because of, he has a long experience of dealing with China because of Foxconn, the leading manufacturer, semiconductor
Let's also
manufacturer
quickly tell our viewers, he's one of the founders of Foxconn.
Yes. And Foxconn is the biggest semiconductor manufacturer in the world. So had he been the only candidate, he probably stood a chance. But now the vote has been split 3 ways. The Kuomintang party, which is the KMT, which is the principal opposition party, has fielded the mayor of Taipei. Their other party has their own candidate, and he's the third candidate.
Okay.
So there is a very slim chance, that he's going to win.
I see no correlation with India whatsoever.
No, he left the party because he wasn't given a ticket. We thought it happens only in India.
I'm sure it happens everywhere for that matter. But I think for me, the story stands out because this is not something we've seen in India. We haven't really, I don't know, I mean, I am trying to jog my memory.
We haven't
seen a big corporate business leader trying to run for either
We've seen it
presidency.
in the US, Donald Trump.
That is the closest example that we can find as far as global business and administration is concerned, but not in India so far.
So I like the statements Mr. Gau has made when it comes to, if that's how we pronounce his name, that he's
I think
made
they'll all
with
forgive
respect,
us for that.
with respect to a hawkish stance against China. It the president in making, or the founder of Foxconn has gone on record and has listed out a complete laundry list of clients that Foxconn caters to, which have great interest from the US. I think how we need to look at his running for presidency has to do a little more with geopolitics than politics within Taiwan alone. Who are some of Foxconn's biggest clients? You've got Apple.
The biggest.
You've got Tesla.
Yes.
You've got Amazon. You've got pretty much any blue chip company, and chip being fairly literal in this case, any company, any large technology conglomerate that runs on data and that needs to process data using semiconductors is by default a big client for Foxconn. And Foxconn by default becomes an indispensable member in the overall supply chain of any of these large companies. Now, these large tech companies are American companies. And there is manufacturing capacity that Foxconn has even in China, in addition to what it has in its own country, Taiwan, and what it is trying to set up in India. So, any sort of political pressure that China may want to put on Taiwan, I think the Foxconn founder running as president, or at some point perhaps becoming president, would be a signal to China that, hey, you cannot mess with Foxconn. And you cannot mess with the
Taiwan.
kind of business that Taiwan does for the US on the back of its semiconductors, and can perhaps rally support from the US to ward off any sort of aggression that China may want to make towards Taiwan. I think that is the geopolitical context and the sort of business context to his running for presidency. I think supersedes any other vote
Domestic,
share, vote split,
political,
domestic,
situation that may be
situation
playing out
Taiwan
in
would be
Taiwan.
subjected to.
Absolutely. I think a very curious sort of domestic as well as international situation playing out there. Taiwan, which is known for its semiconductor business, Foxconn, one of the biggest semiconductor players emanating from Taiwan. Its founder, Terry Gou, is running for presidency. He's running as an independent candidate. We don't know whether he's going to win or not, but interesting geopolitical activity there as far as Taiwan is concerned, hoping to protect its own business, its own people, and ward off some pressure from China at this point in time. That's an interesting story we're tracking, but with that, it's the end on this bulletin. Thanks very much for watching.
Chat GPT. It can generate codes and human-like responses